Like way more than the Brady Bunch.
I know, where's Alice?
Keep it all together.
All right, everybody's in, so it is 6:02 on March 26th. And we're gonna call the select board meeting to order. And just like to remind everybody that the meeting is gonna be recorded on our YouTube channel. So, first off, is there any public comment? Susie? I'm sorry first, sorry. Yes, Susie?
Yes, I'd like to make a public comment that I would like to support the Solid Waste Committee with their revisions that they're presenting tonight to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Miles Epstein? Sorry, Dave. Yep,
Yes, thank you. I also would like the committee to support the changes to the solid waste as presented this evening. Thank you.
okay, thanks. Sorry, Dave, now you.
You have to move over here for a microphone.
We'll move it
Would be
closer.
great, yeah.
Straight away somewhere in that area.
Good evening. I don't want to take any more time than necessary, but I want to explain to the board, the town manager, and the assembled public how the Solid Waste Committee came to make the requested ordinance. This will take about 2 minutes. We make every effort to be efficient with tax dollars while providing an essential service. We have for many years struggled with the concept of commercial haulers, which are currently defined in the ordinance. Anyone who accepts money to haul trash. The primary reason for this prohibition is that we have no ability to assure ourselves that trash brought in by a commercial hauler is actually trash generated in Georgetown. The larger the load, the more difficult it is to inspect, and commercial loads tend to be large loads. We have received feedback from Georgetown residents that they are concerned that they will not be able to have a local cleaner take their trash to the station, or that a friend who is given $20 to haul the trash for a shut-in would be illegal. Technically, both of those scenarios are currently prohibited by our ordinance. We considered various concepts, including a special permit that would allow limited loads to be brought in by local Georgetown haulers. What we finally focused on was harnessing some language from Maine DEP rules defining commercial haulers as persons required to get a transporter license because they service 6 or more households, and to ban such haulers from the transfer station. The revised ordinance would allow commercial establishments transporting their own municipal solid waste 3 times per week or fewer. With the rapid growth of short-term vacation rentals in town, we feel that we need to protect ourselves from possible abuses of haulers who may bring in large loads of trash from multiple households, some of which might be located outside of Georgetown. What this proposed ordinance now does is limit Georgetown residents using the station to servicing no more than 5 other customers, whether for money or not. We feel that this will satisfy the concerns of those who need help with their trash and those who want to service several clients, and will keep load size to a level that we feel the staff can monitor and inspect if necessary. We hope the select board and the voters will find this to be an improvement. We strongly recommend that this revised ordinance be sent to the town attorney for review and on towards public hearing and town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Stephen. You're
Stephen, you're muted.
muted. Sorry.
There we go. Sorry. As most of you folks know, the TOP's been dealing with a fair amount of damage down at the wharf, and the more information we've gathered, the more it's going to require support from the Board of Selectmen and the municipal officers. So I would like the select board to consider tonight a special meeting with the town-owned property management board so that we can make some commitments to repairs and we can come up with a comprehensive plan.
Okay, I know there's a bunch of things involved in the money that you're dealing with. I know it's gotten a lot more than you thought. And we've got a bunch of, between FEMA, ARPA, and some of the other stuff, we've got a bunch of numbers we need to go through. So if after this meeting, over the next week or whatever, you can get together with Tyler and Mary and go over the numbers and find out what we have and where we have it, then once we know real numbers, then we can see whether in fact we actually need to get a special meeting. But until we've got more of those numbers together, that's kind of the next step we need to take. But I'm not, but we just need to make sure we have the right. We can't cross the ARPA and the FEMA. We just need to get more numbers in order, and then we can worry about that part of it.
It's fairly time sensitive, John, and I have spent time with both Tyler and Mary, and we've looked at the numbers. So I think there are enough numbers available for us to sit down as a group and make some commitments to repairs, and if we have to do longer term planning based on available funding and not crossing some of these federal lines where federal monies may be involved. But I think time is of the essence because we're trying to get on someone's dance card to do repairs before Five Islands Lobster Company can open at the very least.
Okay. Well, thank you. We'll get you guys will get back to us and see what the number, just so we have more of a sheet, so I have more of an understanding on that, or the board has more of an understanding, so we get some more numbers to look at.
Okay. Tyler and Mary, you can provide this Board of Selectmen with the numbers that we've been looking at?
We can work to provide those, Stephen. I know that today when we met, we still had to do some number crunching here at the office based on what's in different accounts. And as we talked about this afternoon, there was just no way to get that ready for prime time in 3 hours. But once we have a little bit more information, we can either schedule something offline to make sure we can get a special meeting put together, or, if it's something that falls directly in the TOP&B's purview, if there's enough money in the right buckets. So does that make sense?
Just for
It does.
clarification, we're talking about a special meeting of the select board, not a special town meeting, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
With the TOP&B members
Right, I
would
understand
be
what
my
you're asking.
recommendation.
I understand what you're asking. Thank you.
Okay. Tell me what I can do to give you more information. I'll let you get on with your meeting, but I do think time is of the essence here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And for what it's worth, Stephen, we agree that time is of the essence, especially to get that area in front of the Love Nest taken care of.
Thanks. Perfect. Any more public comment?
I have something to say.
Okay.
Okay, I've been going to the transfer
What's her
station,
name?
formerly known as the dump, since Dewey sat in his rocking chair and tossed gas cans in the burning trash. The town has changed and laws have changed, and the operation at the transfer station necessarily changes to keep up with the needs of the town. For the last few years, I've been one of the volunteers who spend several hours each week helping to keep the Georgetown Mall organized. I see how well the staff manages the operations, keeping the station clean, safe, and friendly, preventing hazardous materials from being left, making sure the dumpsters and bins are emptied on a regular basis, and helping people recycle as much as possible, thereby saving the town money. I can also see the challenges that arise with the changing town: summertime traffic, one-time uninformed or careless patrons, and large truckloads of trash, sometimes overwhelming the station. Which brings me to the Solid Waste Transfer Committee, the members of which have collectively put in more than 75 years of volunteer time working hard to keep the transfer station operating efficiently, safely, legally, and financially for the benefit of the town. They spent hours listening, researching, and debating the changes in the ordinance, searching for the best way to keep the station running smoothly throughout the year in the most fiscally responsible way. I believe they found it in these changes to the ordinance, and I ask the select board to approve the changes.
Thank you.
Ari, it's good.
Ari, where are you? Oh,
I'm
you're
right
up there.
here.
Okay, sorry.
Everything Emily said, and I've reviewed the ordinance a couple of times. It seems like a good compromise for all the competing interests that we may have here in town. And so I'm also in support of this ordinance. Thank you. And thanks to everyone who worked on it, including the select board's consideration and of course the solid waste committee of volunteers with their multiple runs at trying to incorporate all of the important interests that we deal with here in town. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi,
Is there somebody else?
yep, Mike McDermott.
Oh, okay.
Hi, how are you?
Yes. All right.
I guess I'm maybe number 5 or number 6. I'd really like to encourage the select board to honor the work done by the Solid Waste Management Committee and submit the solid waste management ordinance at town meeting as drafted by the committee. And I think the fourth or fifth or sixth person advocating on behalf of the committee to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Bob Gravino on Bay Point Road. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before the board this evening and ask that the selectmen approve the draft of the Waste Committee's ordinance as the committee wrote and submitted it to the board. As a voter, taxpayer, and resident in Georgetown, I strongly believe that their proposal is fair and equitable to all Georgetown users of the transfer station and the Georgetown taxpayers who pay for the transfer station's budget. I thank you for your consideration of the hard work and effort of the Waste Committee members for their proposal that I strongly believe is fair and equitable to all residents of Georgetown. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And is that just your space keeper?
Yes, that is the mouse moved.
Is there any more public comment? Wait, seeing none, I guess we can move on and your spot now.
Were there any items to be added to the agenda if approved by the chair and board? I had none.
I've got nothing.
I don't think I have anything. All right. And then under scheduled appointments at 6:30, we will be meeting with the Financial Advisory Committee to discuss the draft budget. And then we'll move into minutes and we'll try to get through as much of the business that we can that doesn't have as much deliberation to be on time. So with that.
I move approval of the February 27th meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. 3-0. Perfect.
I move
And-
approval of the March 12th minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, discussion, vote.
Aye.
3-0.
All right. And under the review section, I had the updated changes to the solid waste management ordinance, and I just want to note we'll be tackling this as we did with the last meeting under old business on ordinances disposition. You were also emailed out the February hauling numbers. Under assessing items, Bill Van Tynen is still in possession of the working waterfront land classification for the Jameses, and that will be coming back to us. And I just want to note that we've received the application ahead of April 1, so even if the distinction is applied after the fact by the board, it's based on the receipt of that application, so it would apply to this tax year. And Bill was pretty confident this will qualify. We're still tied up on the mapping. There was also an application for a veteran's exemption received from David Harrison, and I will note that he met the criteria.
Does that need to be?
We
does that
need a motion. Move
Yes.
to accept the veterans exemption from David Harrison.
Second.
Any discussion? No, vote.
All right, 3-0.
Favor.
Perfect. And thank you, David, for your service. We also received an abatement application from Janice Belmonte for building valuations on 4 Carriage Lane. I will note that I did forward this application on to Bill Van Tynen, and I did have a conversation with Miss Belmonte today. It was the opinion of Mr. Van Tynen that this application did not meet the sufficient criteria for an abatement because the damages to the property came after the April 1st deadline. In my conversation with Jan today, I did express that her damage assessment report was received by the town, and we will make sure the assessors are able to document what's there so there's an accurate reflection on taxes next year. And I just wanted to share all of that information before the board weighed in on a determination.
I want to move to disapprove.
Yep.
I moved to disapprove the application for an abatement for Janice Belmonte, Forge Carriage Lane, 8R, tag 007.
Thank you.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I do have one thing.
Oh,
See that? I knew it was coming up. I asked a few weeks ago about the status of the campground, non-campground owned property. I know you talked to Bill.
Yes.
And, or if we don't have to have an answer now, but are you going to have an answer on how we're capturing that tax revenue?
Absolutely. Just for
Okay.
what it's worth, I did talk with Bill and we're currently going back and forth on a draft letter to make sure Ts are crossed and Is are dotted
Absolutely.
on that approach, but we
Thank
are
you.
on top of it. Thank you, Rich.
Yep, that's all I have.
All right, and I will go very quickly through our correspondence. In your packet, you received the FEMA declarations for the 9th, for January 9 through 13, and there were a series of accompanying documents. The one thing that I would say, we were holding our breath to find out whether or not the storms would be combined as one disaster declaration or the two. And thankfully, it's going to be one disaster declaration with expanded dates, which will definitely help us capture. FEMA is sending out a lot of information fast and furious, so just stay on top of your emails. We also received a legislative update from Senator Eloise Vitelli, and there were some good community resources in there and community events. The Recreation Committee has put out their announcement for the Get to Know Your Neighbor and Citizen of the Year nomination information. Nominations to the Recreation Committee are due by April 1st, and Get to Know Your Neighbor, get on the calendar for April 28th. You also had in your packet the Maine Municipal Association's Legislative Bulletin number 11. I would just want to let you know we are continuing to monitor the comings and goings in Augusta, and where appropriate, we will submit testimony, and where not, we will avoid it like the plague. Funny joke. And then we have on the RMS Express Risk Management from MMA. It's a quick, good read, just to know of good practices the towns can take to reduce their risks. And lastly, there was a letter from New Hope of Midcoast. And I just want to flag that they are good community resources. We had no other correspondence. We were in receipt of a receipt for pumping from the Heimels on Old Schoolhouse Road. We also are in the process of waste discharge license renewals for the Ocean Avenue Irrevocable Trust, 24 Ocean Avenue, and the Quadrinos on Keene Way. Getting into committee updates, we were in receipt of the February meeting of the Conservation Commission minutes. I also want to flag that we received the Recreation Committee minutes a little bit after, but we'll consider them on this agenda. And with that, I would turn this over to board members for liaison updates. That is a good time.
I don't think I had anything going on. I didn't have any meetings this last few weeks.
Back me
I
up.
have nothing
Oh,
to
look,
contribute.
We had the meeting with Matt Mahan, and we just need more, we're still looking for more information on both sides, trying to get the status of some of the roads and some of the press, some of the history of how it got voted in, and stuff like that.
And a good town visit in May.
Oh, that's right. That's it, sorry.
And Rich.
The ordinances went to Kristen. She immediately came back. She's sharp, a lot sharper than our last, with a deadline. And that's why I reached out to Tyler, and the 7th is our ordinance hearing. So I believe I requested the feedback from her around the 17th. That would get it in the Thursday before our next meeting to get it on the agenda.
That's May 7th and April 17th.
Pardon me?
The hearing is May 7th.
The public ordinance hearing is May 7th.
Thank you. And
And
the
I asked her to return them by Wednesday, the 17th. So
of
they would make
April,
the
the
agenda.
17th of April, correct?
Yes,
What month?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but this 17th occurs every month.
right. The 17th of April. So it will make the agenda for the 23rd of April select board meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
You didn't have the date, the months. That
I
I was
wasn't
a little,
finished speaking yet.
well, I was a little confused also.
Right.
And let me add Chris Martin from the waiting room. Were there any other liaison updates or board member updates?
I have none tonight.
I don't think I do.
All right. So the next item, we're getting into old business with the board's leisure. I do think the ordinances discussion could take longer than 8 minutes. And we do have an appointment with the FAC who are waiting. Is it appropriate to carry on with the agenda and return to that after our scheduled meeting?
I'm okay with that.
That's
Is
fine.
Michael here?
He is not. He is out of town.
Roger.
So we will hop on. I just wanted to, in your packet, I provided the legal counsel's opinion from MMA on ARPA, and I just wanted to update the board. We had a couple of series of conversations about the use of lost revenue, and I just wanted to flag that the projects need to be designated as a part of that, as we discussed, but I wanted to make sure at an official meeting that was clear to everyone. So if there are any questions on that, we're more than happy to follow up. We also had a follow-up discussion regarding dumpsters and assistance from the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. Monique Coombs, who runs their organization, had reached out a while back offering to get a dumpster placed here in town to assist with storm cleanup. What she needed from us, I followed up to see how can we get this show on the road. We need a location, some ideal dates, and a little bit of backup dates, and any additional equipment to help load the dumpsters. I will say the wharf to me logically makes the most sense as a staging location. I have spoken with the TOPMB and they believe mid to end of April would potentially be a good time to get that down there. Anytime in April, but recognizing it's going to take a little bit of lead time for the association to pull that off. Yes, Rich.
Just so you're aware, I think the 15th tentatively is the day the crane's going to be down there swinging the floats. So before you put a dump, it's a great idea and I support it 100%. Let's deconflict TOPMB to make sure that we don't put a dumpster in the spot where the
Crane's gonna
be.
because that's more expensive.
It will be. Certainly more expensive than a free dumpster.
Would the, is the board open to me working with the TOPMB to set up dates and just get that placed?
I
just wanna-
I would make a motion to that effect. Yes.
I'm in favor.
All right, and all in favor was 3-0. So I will get that information out to you guys and touch base with Monique. And under new business, we have a scheduled appointment that's coming up. Under the second item of new business, we have an appointment of Michael Field as as the alternate code enforcement officer. Michael, and I think Bronwyn could speak to this because she's actually the one that met with Michael that day.
Happy to do that. Michael was recommended as a successor to Chris Wilcoxon by the Woolwich Select Board. He's a resident of Woolwich, a Select Board member at the present time, a former member of the Planning Board in Woolwich, as well as the former police chief in Bath. And he is anxious to serve all 3 towns that Chris was working with. So as a result of our meeting with the other select boards, I believe we're prepared to go forward individually with contracts with Michael in the same capacity that Chris occupied, with a different salary arrangement, which Mary can speak to. But we'd like to appoint him, give him an official appointment so that he can follow in Chris's footsteps, be mentored by Chris, go to trainings, and ultimately take over. That's projected to happen in June when Chris leaves, and then Michael would come on full time. There is no salary requirement from him at this time. He would not need any money until he actually entered the full position. So I'd like to move that we appoint him alternate code enforcement officer for the interim until such time as Chris leaves.
Second.
All right.
Cool. I'm all for it.
Any-
Oh, sorry.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Perfect. And we have 3 minutes left.
Volunteering. Okay.
And we have 3 minutes left, so I will get through that last item of new business before we circle back. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention that the Mid-Coast Council of Governments had reached out to the town by way of the Conservation Commission to seek our participation in a climate resiliency grant. I included the proposal for a sustainability grant, but I included the proposal in your packet. In short, they are the ones applying for grant funding to bring in some professionals to assist towns in long-term planning for their working waterfront areas. In particular, they want to shed light on project status of vulnerable working waterfronts, highlight their uses, and review how towns have prioritized upgrades and could potentially down the road plan to fund them. In talking with Meg Rasmussen at MCOG, this is a really good opportunity, I believe, for the town. I did not seek a vote tonight. There's nothing that is on the hook that commits the town financially. There's nothing on the hook that means the town must act on the action plan. But one thing that's really exciting is that if Mid-Coast Council of Governments, who we pay dues to through our county contribution at SAG, actually can get us a document to have on the shelves that if we're seeking future funding from grants, one of the typical requirements is that they're looking for, you know, what's your plan? And this could mean we'd have a plan on the shelf. I wanted to give the board a chance to check in, ask any questions, and if they wanted to pull the plug on our participation, do it now, but I would not recommend that. I think this is a really exciting opportunity for new resources, good planning that we don't have to pay for and we can implement at our leisure. I hope I answered that well, and in particular, after the damage we sustained at the wharf, they wanted to step in and help Georgetown. So if there were any questions, great. If not, I believe.
Do you want any kind of a motion, Tyler?
We didn't need a motion on this one, Bronwyn, so I wasn't particularly, but if the board wanted to put it down on paper, they're in support. That's a great thing to be reflected in the record for 20 years from now.
It seems like a no-brainer to me. I'd be happy to move that we participate in whatever non-financial way we can to support the efforts of this grant application.
All right.
Yep, so that's a second.
Yep, Rich second. All those in favor?
I'm in favor.
It's 3-0. And again, this is a grant that MCOG will be managing, but they'll be working with us and are very excited to do so. And with that, I have talked too much, and now there are folks that can speak a lot more knowledgeably about the proposed budget. 6:30 on the dot, Bob. Look at that.
You want to say the big one too?
Yeah, come on over.
This version of the budget is up to date with everything that we have at the current moment.
Bob,
There are
could you move closer to the table? Just shove in a little bit, then you'll be on camera and you'll be closer to the mic.
Will you push the mic a little bit closer to Bob?
Perfect, thank you.
As I was saying, this budget is not complete. There are some items that are missing just because we don't have answers yet. We're still a little bit early on it, but this gives you a chance to go through it and see if you have any questions. So I don't know how much you've looked at it. We'll just go through it quickly. I'm not going to say anything about the total budget or the municipal budget. or the expected revenue sources. I think we just need to deal with the committees and individual budget pages. The town office of salaries, the select board is working on those. And we don't have any information yet. I understand you're gonna be meeting within the next week or so to discuss those.
Do you want to hit the school first?
Page 5.
Yep. It's a minor issue on the budget, so I didn't think it was important. This is the budget as it currently stands. There's one missing component on this. They have a placeholder in it, and that would be salaries. This is a contract year. They are in the process of going through the contract negotiations. They don't have a final, but they do have, like I said, they did put a placeholder in there so that when you go through the regular instruction, special instruction, and so on, wherever there's teachers or teachers' aides involved, those numbers on the individual budget pages for the school are placeholders. They're subject to change. And down at the bottom with, under the appropriations, if you look at use of school fund balance, they won't be able to answer that until they get the audit, which they don't have yet. We already talked about town office salaries. Town office expenses. There's a hole there for custodian salary. Everything else is pretty solid. I don't think we've got any hangers there, do we, Mary?
I don't think so. You know, we bumped up the computer software a little bit. We've got, you know, some additional software. But I don't believe that there's anything that's shocking. We did bump up education and training because the management institute that we do like to send the administrator to yearly is a little bit pricey. And Alex is talking about also going to her convention, which is the tax collector and treasurer's thing. So we bumped that budget up a little bit to support that and to support any additional education that the folks will get. So. But other than that, and of course, the corresponding mileage to go with that. So you see that the training line's up, also the mileage line is up, so.
And the rate used for the mileage is basically the federal recommended.
We put 67 cents per mile in the budget.
General government tax collection expense is still open. Social Security is still open, of course, because the salaries haven't been set. The numbers for the insurance are pretty solid at this point.
Yeah.
And
Is there any time frame on that audit yet still, or are we still?
Well, we asked for the audit to be done at the end of December, of
No, I
course,
understand that.
and same thing for the school. We are both, this is a new audit group that we're working with. Everybody is behind on their audits.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm hopeful and I'm still working with them. They're still asking questions. A couple weeks ago, I sent her some additional information, so I know that they're working on it, but. And I've also sent out the request for a quote, which is what we're waiting
How
for.
do we, if that doesn't, that needs to be in, is there some way around it if it isn't in on time, or how would we play that?
Well, if you're talking about the undesignated funds, which is really what I really count on the audit to give me,
Okay,
because I give the auditors the only thing, our audit, when I was doing the audits, the only thing that they ever changed really was the balance sheet, deferred taxes, things like that. So they really never touched the expense side of it because I do the accruals and so really, it's just trying to get to a good solid undesignated fund balance, which we love to have a good solid number before we plan on utilizing it, so yes. And you know, I can't expect, the audit went very smooth, so I don't expect a large increase. If, you know, but like I said, I've asked twice now for a quote, so. And again, like Bob said, social security is directly related to, you know, what we're doing
Yeah.
with salaries, so.
Mary, I looked through, I did not see, there's a new leave law that goes into effect
Yes.
that requires town contribution
That's correct.
in May of 2025.
It actually, January. is
Or
when we have to
January
start
1st.
paying, yes,
Okay, I thought it was
yes.
May 1st we had
Yeah.
to pay, which is
Yeah.
a weird day.
It is,
Anyway,
but yeah,
1% for
wages.
towns and 0.5% from the employee. And the town can assume the entire responsibility
Correct.
if we wish.
It's one, I believe it's 1% and it can be halved.
It depends how many employees you have.
Right.
Up to 15, it's 0.5%, above 15 is 1%. Anyway, Hollowell is putting $40,000 into their account. That's what they're budgeting for next year. I can't imagine how many employees Hollowell has,
Right.
but that's their number from a
That's
town
quite
council
high.
member. It's a
Yeah.
really high number.
Yeah,
As long as we're not
I'm-
surprised by it.
right.
We're-
I'm dumping that right into that social security line.
Okay,
So that when I do that, I'm gonna be doing it at 8.65% for half of each, you know, because it doesn't really, you know, we're gonna have from July to December.
Yeah.
Without it.
right.
So when I do my calculation, I'm gonna be calculating 1% on top of that for January 1 to June 30.
Absolutely.
That's my plan at this point.
Outstanding. Thanks, Mary.
But thank you for making mention of it in case, yes, thank you.
Roger.
There's also, excuse me, a family medical leave
Yes.
act that currently I'm getting mixed messages on whether or not it applies to us as a municipality. So I'm still trying to get answers on that.
Well, I'm sure the state is gonna reimburse the town, right? They wouldn't
Of course.
have a unfunded mandate.
Indeed.
Only at 56%.
Right, indeed. Yeah,
Okay, next up is Planning Board and Board of Appeals. Those remain the same from last year. There's no changes there. Conservation Commission. There was a question on this, and I clarified that today with Kathy Gravino. The trail surveying line, $4,000. There's $3,000 in the surveying reserve fund. The survey that they want to do this year should complete all of the surveys that they had questions on. So they will be taking $3,000 out of their reserve fund, which will zero their reserve fund. The town's contribution will be $1,000 from the taxpayers. So after that, and if there is no further need for a survey, we won't be putting any money into the reserve fund. But that's overall a 16% increase. TOPMB, this is somewhat in a state of flux due to the damages from the storm. We had a quick meeting with the Jim Peavy from TOPMB this afternoon.
no, Stephen Mace.
Steve Mace, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
And there's a lot of different questions as to federal funds, town funds, what can be reimbursed and what cannot be reimbursed. Did you have any further updates on that, Mary or Tyler?
No, I had a dentist appointment directly after that meeting. No,
We're working on it.
Yeah, so I mean, for right now, these numbers are good for what we have, but there are pending bills.
yes, this budget will definitely be changing, and if you look on the next page, I've got that Wharf Reserve Fund highlighted. And that's just because the board had come to you folks with a request for, you know, the usage of 90,000 back in January. So that needs to be taken from that, you know, so I just wanted, that was more of a thing for everybody to know that that's not a good number and is going to be fixed.
And right now, the highest priority on repairs down there is a retaining wall that is just in front of, or will be just in front of the love nest in that area, because that's eroding away. And every time a wave slaps up there, it causes more damage. This would be built higher, allow for drainage, and be reinforced.
The one catch there is they definitely want to get that done this fiscal year because of the kickoff of the season.
Yeah.
So just for that first phase.
And from a meeting we had with contractors, it's gonna take a couple of weeks from the time they say go. So it's not gonna be a long drawn out process. We have time, and we're also trying to deconflict with the crane that's gonna be at the wharf, because the guys are gonna be cutting concrete away from in front of the love nest. So there's a whole bunch of nuance to the repair, to the dumpster, to the floats.
Bunch of moving parts.
A whole bunch of moving parts, but smart people will be able to figure this out. Tyler, you're in charge. Don't mess it up.
I went to Mount Ararat, be careful.
Animal control. Again, the salary is yet to be determined, but other than that, the mileage, we've reduced the number of miles per year. It's at the 67 cents a mile rate, but it's come down to $235 as opposed to $459. The animal shelter has stayed the same, other expenses are the same, and training is the same.
As far as the shelter hasn't gone up, that's a surprise.
Yeah, that was a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
Code enforcement, the big change here, of course, is that there's a new line item for a salary for the code enforcement officer, which has never been there before, because he was paid through a stipend and permit fees. The permit fees now will flow into the general fund, and he will get a salary. Fire department. The overall thing on the fire department is the personnel expenses have gone up due to mandatory increases, minimum wage and so on. And there is a decrease on the operating expenses. So overall, and we're not making any purchases of new vehicles this year. So overall, there's a 14% decrease in the entire budget. But like I say, there are personnel expense increases.
Yes. We're also setting up a new capital equipment reserve fund for those, for not part of the emergency vehicle reserve. As a capital equipment reserve, they've requested $10,000 for that.
Yeah, there are
Jaws of life.
pieces of,
Like that.
pieces of equipment that need to be replaced periodically, and if at all possible, we'd like to see sometime in the future, not immediately, but a little ways down the road, a couple of 3 years, the purchase of a CPR machine. It enables us to attach this to a person who needs CPR, and the machine takes over and does it so that the EMTs can attend to other issues, making sure that everything's good and you don't wear people out. Because if you're doing CPR, about every 3 to 5 minutes, you need to rotate people out.
Yep.
Harbor Committee. There's nothing really earth shattering there, other than we've got a placeholder there for the wages until that's resolved.
And the FAC had bumped up the postage line for the
Yes,
ARPA committee.
Yes, I forgot about that.
They are requesting $100 worth of postage, but the FAC, with the town clerk's input, is saying that that's not enough. They started implementing putting a sticker on your mooring ball. And since, approximately 70% of our moorings are done by the mail, she's now mailing all of those stickers to people. Where before you just mail your check in and your mooring fee was paid. Have a nice day. So we need to account for some of that postage.
Yeah.
So.
The select board needs to raise mooring fees.
Shellfish conservation. The only thing there that is possibly controversial is under the shellfish warden uniforms and equipment line. There had been a request for a payment to the warden for use of the internet, because a lot of his business is done online. We are recommending that the FAC are recommending that it stay static at what it has been, $250 for the year. Solid waste management. The only line item there that is still open really is the wages for the attendants. Everything else is pretty solid. They did request, and the FAC agrees with an increase in the reserve fund for equipment. And that's what they looking down the road at needing to get a new comp. So we've got a reserve fund already set up, and we just agree with putting a little bit more in there. So when the time comes, hopefully it'll be fully paid for by the reserve fund. Roads budget itself is in good shape. There is some discussion as to exactly the payment for the Robin Hood Road culvert and the work that needs to be done there, because the grant coverage right now, it looks like there's more grant availability than we need, and whether or not any of that can be diverted to help for paving and stuff like that in that area, because the grant, the quote for the culvert itself doesn't include paving,
Okay.
as I understand it.
Well, and just one thing I add on that, the FEMA grant itself is gonna pay for the contractual stuff that this board's already dedicated. However, when the board chose Pine Tree Engineering as the town engineer in the past, because it was not put out to a competitive bid at the time, FEMA will not allow us to use that specific grant money to pay them. However, we are able to use money from the DEP stream crossing grant to pay the folks at Pine Tree to make sure it's taken care of. So I just wanted to flag that as one of the pieces.
So there's a little bit of final discussion as to exactly how the grant money is going to be used and so
I
on.
think there was paving on those bids. I did see paving on those paving numbers on those bids.
Yes,
So is that
but not for the Robin Hood Road
road
itself.
itself? Correct,
That
correct.
portion.
Okay,
Yeah, so we're talking, yes, for that section, yes.
okay.
It's part of that, it's tied up in that 383.
Yep.
But the question was, what else could we accomplish? So
Okay,
that's what yeah. So the appropriation section and both capital expenses and the appropriation section on that will still need to be worked out.
Mhm.
Now, we have been, for a few years now, probably 5 or so anyway, have been putting away money every year for the Robin Hood culvert. We are not at this stage of the game until the project is complete, recommending that the town sweep that back. But there is money there. We will be looking at that and seeing, or recommending something to the board next year on that, leaving it here for now until that project.
If there's
is
another
complete.
project in town that can be used on for the roads, is that something, or does it
Well-
just need to get swept back into the general fund?
Well, that would be the question, and that, you know, I think the FAC will talk about that and make a recommendation to the
Okay.
board, but, it's certainly, you know.
I'm just curious.
The roads, those funds aren't gonna go down,
We-
the
we
cost
need-
of it.
We need to get the stuff with the grants straightened out
Right.
first.
Yep,
Right.
perfect, no, that's,
And what I will say is out of that fund that the town had put together, 10% of the total project has to come from that, whereas
Right.
90% will come from the grant. So some of that
Yeah.
money will
Okay.
be tied up.
Yeah.
perfect.
Snow removal, that's contract, nothing to discuss there. Health Social Services. This is a list of requests from area groups that would like the town to donate money that they traditionally help out the people in the town. We've recommended approving the amount that has been requested in all of the organizations that have requested in the past. We have one new request, Bath Brunswick Respite Care.
Respite.
What was
It's a
that?
respite care. It's
Respite,
relief for caregivers.
okay.
You know, like a daycare for Alzheimer patients, or that, I don't know exactly what they do, but that's what respite care is. Taking over, relieving a caregiver from a chronic caregiving situation.
But after reviewing the data that was given with the request, the FAC is recommending no donation. Big Brother, Big Sister, which has requested money in the past, they have not submitted a request this year. So that's why that's at zero. Life Flight of Maine and Maine Public. We don't really use them. Life Flight, I've been with the fire department now for about 20 years. I think we've used them 3, maybe 4 times at the most in that 20 years. Maine Public, they have their own funding request. They have a we don't think that they need money from the town for that. The rest of them have been approved. And just for clarity, Life Flight of Maine and Maine Public request every year. Even though it says new here, it's not new in the same respect that respite care was.
Right.
Recreation Committee,
Bob,
Can I-
could you go back to the Y capital campaign?
yeah. The YMCA has requested a one-time request of $10,000 for their capital campaign. Recommendation is that be a separate warrant article,
A standalone article.
Yeah,
not
standalone.
Tied up in this.
not tied up in this.
Okay,
So that
at the meeting.
at the meeting, the townspeople get a chance to vote on that single item as to whether they want to do anything with that or not.
And I just put it here just so that it doesn't get lost in any shuffles. We'll pull it out of here.
Yeah.
But. So, do you want to talk about patent free at all? Before we head over to the next page, or patent free went up by 5%.
Yeah, but that's,
Yeah. General assistance, we have not requested anything else at this point. We have used, I'm gonna say probably about $400 in this year, and that was just recently, within the past month or so. The Georgetown Community Center request came in for $10,000, which is a $2,000 increase this year. According to their letter to the board, indicated that increases not only because everything is up. They also, provided a financial statement with all total utilities and all that stuff. But part of it is that we instituted a community cupboard this year. And we, you know, are funding that. And then, you know, the X fund has been utilized a lot. So that's why we're asking for that extra 2 at the community center level. And Richard's library came in flat.
Yeah.
So, and then next is
Mary, if I may,
certainly.
with the hurdles of general assistance in the state of Maine,
Mhm.
we've had $4,000 in that GA line, and we've used a couple of hundred at max a year.
Mhm.
I personally don't see a problem, especially with the $2,000 increase to the community center,
Mhm.
which is reasonable. I've seen the bills.
Mhm. Mhm.
But we could offset that with a reduction in the GA line by $2,000. That would keep the social services portion of this flat.
Yep.
Or we could even bump the community center X fund line or donation to be used at their discretion.
Mhm.
The 2,000 from the 4 could go to 12,000 at the community center.
Gotcha.
I know that
Okay.
we've used a tremendous amount of money, and we're in my other hat now. We've used a tremendous amount of money
Right.
for oil, for heat, for food,
Mhm.
for neighbors.
Right. Yeah.
And GA will never, GA rules are so hard to follow that no one is eligible for GA. And by the time you get it through, the state only reimburses a portion. It's easier to say, here is a gift card for Shaw's or Hannaford from the community center,
Mhm.
go buy groceries. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in.
Mhm.
So if we can have a discussion on that, and when the select board discusses, that will enhance our community center line and decrease that GA line. Thank you. Sorry, Bob.
No problem. Recreation Committee. The FAC has recommended, with the exception of 3 lines, that the request from the Recreation Committee be accepted. The 3 lines that we have recommended differently on with the Get to Know Your Neighbor Party. Last year or this year, the Get to Know Your Neighbor Party is 3,000. They're recommending 3,500 for next year. FAC is recommending 3,000. When you look at the history of it, in 22-23 it was 2,000, 23-24 it's 3,000, and then for 24-25 it's 3,500. We do have inflation, but it's not that much. The outdoor activity party and the sporting events on school vacation program, our understanding is the attendance on that is minimal to 0. We recommended that the $125 be deleted for that, for those 2 items. Cemetery trustees. There's a question on flags and plaques as to why that went up that much. There is a significant increase or significant request for stonework around the cemetery.
Campbell Square.
Yeah, Campbell Square. And this is bottom line is $30,000 wouldn't begin to finish the work that needs to be done there. A respected member of the town that has a lot of experience in that said that basically to do the work that they want done would be about $100,000. If the entire stonework is going to be done down there, it should be spread out over several years. And
So I'm the liaison with the cemetery trustees, so I'm gonna go back to them and talk with them about this, see if we wanna come up with some type of plan. They were going to use the 30,000 that they put in the budget from their, from the cemetery fund, which has a little over 80,000 in it. So it wasn't gonna be any effect to us, but it's a huge project. They'd like to get that whole fencing, that whole stone wall taken care of and get a new gate there and all that stuff. So, it is a long-term project, I think.
Anything else there? And then McMahon Island. And again, this is a special law. The FAC had their way, it'd be 0, but we don't. Yep. So that in a nutshell is where we are today.
Today,
Yeah. We still have some work to do, but I think we're a bit more than 90% to the finish line. And in pretty good shape. Now, having said that, right now, based on what we have, we're looking at a 1.9% increase in the requests. And the total to be raised by property taxes unfortunately goes up about 10%.
yeah.
That's not a final.
Cannot use that and do that. Because in salaries, we don't have a good solid number for usage of undesignated fund balance and there's some other pieces we just don't have yet.
Let me get Lisa in. Oh, she joined at 7. I wonder if she missed 6.
So. You folks have any questions at this point?
I don't have any questions.
Bring it
at
back,
this
okay,
point.
okay. And like I said, we'll be working on salaries. Brahman and I will be sitting down to go over all of that, and we'll be coming up with a proposal, for you, I believe, for your next meeting. I've been looking around at salaries,
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Thanks to your committee for the work they do. Thankless.
And with that, we've now completed all of our new business. We've tackled most of the old business. I believe the last item before we close up tonight is ordinances dispositions. And in your packet, I did include the tracker that updated all of the action that was taken at the last meeting, as well as highlighting the solid waste management ordinance and noting a few of their changes. And I would turn this over to the board for their deliberation.
So we've got that last,
That is the new change that came in over the weekend.
Did you print that for all of us?
I believe you have your packet.
I'll look. I haven't seen it. I have it in front of me on my computer. And I have power.
yeah, it should be, yeah, it's right here. Almost at the end of it.
Well, I have 2 of one, but I don't have that.
Do you want me to go run off a copy or do you want the one on your computer?
Either, doesn't matter. I can give an overview. Once John and Brown have an opportunity.
Yeah, no, I. I understand what they're trying to do with it. I mean, I've seen with the. And that's,
Mary, you want a copy?
Awesome. That'll help. I had 2 of the, 2 of these,
Ah,
but I didn't have any of those.
and it must have been when yeah, bizarre.
That's all right. Not the end of the world.
I saved you a few pieces of paper, Rich.
You're the man. Thank you. Well, I mean, I can start with, Brahma, do you have any input on this?
I'm sorry, I cut out for a few minutes. Where are we? Are we discussing the solid waste ordinance?
Yes.
We just started that discussion.
Okay, my input is I would like to move that we accept their revisions and forward the ordinance as presented to legal for review.
I have discussion on this. I'll second it, but I just have
Okay.
discussion. I'll
Discussion.
second that motion.
And when you get here,
Okay, the first thing, I don't need any notes from Mary. I've thought long and hard about the suspension of privileges for someone in violation. And I don't like that we're putting our transfer station employees in that position. I think that their position can be teaching and guiding. Thanks, Mary. And if someone were to violate a rule and put the wrong, to throw away a propane container, for instance, on the metal pile, then our guys should say, hey, that's not allowed here, etc. Explain the rules and move on. If the same person comes back and they throw another propane container in there, or they give anyone any lip or whatever the case may be, at that point, the solid waste attendant or the supervisor should come to the Board of Selectmen and they say, hey, John Smith did this and I gave him a warning, I gave him guidance, and I told him what the rules were. And that puts the bad guy onus on the Board of Selectmen instead of Jim or Frank or Scott or whomever. And I think if that had happened in October, the last time this happened, we wouldn't have had the misunderstanding between the Solid Waste Committee and the Board of Selectmen that we had. I think it's a fairly easy change, and we're just taking the bad guy status away from the transfer station guy and put it on the select board.
I think the issue there is immediacy. My understanding of the ordinance intention was that the manager of the transfer station or whoever was designated as in charge for that day had the authority to temporarily ask someone to leave who was misusing the facility. The change that was recommended at the most recent meeting in response to questions about this at our last meeting was that there be a requirement that the manager or the designee report within 24 hours to the select board that this had occurred, so that the select board could choose to take action or review the situation. In that this has hardly ever happened, it doesn't seem to me that it's a great onus of negativity on our staff. It gives them authority to deal with something that's happening in front of them in real time. Now, I don't know how, I confess that they were not at the meeting, except Jim was there and certainly was not averse to having this authority. He didn't want ultimate authority for suspending somebody's transfer station or tearing it off their car, their sticker or something. But the ability to say, I'm sorry, but you can't do that here. You have to leave until you resolve whatever that issue is. That you find another place for the container, you take the lawnmower away, you remove the oil and bring the lawnmower back. Any of those things. And I wouldn't want to eliminate this from the ordinance without input from the committee, and if they wished it, input from staff. It seems we don't usually mess around with ordinances at the select board level.
Oh, we do.
And I'm not comfortable doing that with it here.
Okay, Ron, when we're updating planning board ordinances, I'm involved in the changes. And
Sure, but you're the
Sorry.
liaison to the planning board.
Oh, right, and it says deny access. That doesn't say ask someone to leave. Deny access says you can't come back. And I have, I'm sure, because that's exactly what happened last year. And when the people came back, they didn't know they weren't allowed because they weren't told when they left, because they left in a huff. And then they came in and they hadn't violated any of the rules that caused them to be asked to leave the first time. And then they were told that they were denied access. And then there was an argument and they left in a huff again. So they had corrected the violation. And when they were notified that, oh, well, you have been denied access, they got mad again. So to eliminate that denial of access, I certainly support anyone saying, you're behaving poorly, go away. But the next time they come in, that the folks in the transfer station should not be in that position. That's what we're here for.
I think that there was a lot of miscommunication in October. And that is what they were trying to solve by saying that any incident had to be reported on an incident form within 24 hours, whether or not the town office was open. That if it's not open, they're supposed to call the select board chair.
I'll be getting a phone call on Saturday morning.
I live that dream.
No,
Okay.
no, I understand. I get that.
There you have it. That's your prerogative. That's okay. Now, the next points, and I appreciate everyone stepping up and supporting the Solid Waste Committee. It is good to see that that many people are involved. To clarify a couple of things that Solid Waste presented last week, I called Carla Hopkins. She's the director of solid waste from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. And I've talked to her twice, and I've invited her and her field agent that represents the Mid-Coast to come down. No one transporting, regardless of how many homes, in a vehicle under a gross weight of 10,001 pounds requires a license from DEP. It's only 10,001 pounds and above. If it's construction waste, it's 25,001 pound and above. So anyone using a half-ton pickup truck will never require a permit from the Department of Environmental Protection. And then I asked the follow-up question, because with the planning board, we have a lot of state mandated requirements that we have to put in our ordinance, specifically in the shoreland zone. The DEP does not require a transporter license to be, or transporter definition to be in our ordinance. And I asked that a couple of times, and she talked to her people and then called me back and said, no, there's no requirement for definitions as far as DEP goes. The next thing is, and I called Chris Martin at Sheepscott Island Company. Sheepscott Island Company does not generate any solid waste. The 22 homeowners that use Chris's services to bring trash off of McMahon make him a solid waste transporter. And by our ordinance, we would then be preventing Chris from bringing trash off of McMahon.
Well, that is not how the Solid Waste Committee is interpreting what they have done.
Well,
their interpretation, if I can finish, their interpretation is that
I wasn't done. May I finish?
Certainly.
Why, thank you. So once again, then I asked about Malden, and there are 11 families. And now that the cookhouse is gone, the LLC does not produce any solid waste. The families produce it, and the LLC pays a caretaker to remove the trash. Once again, there are more than 5 homes, and regardless of how we intend the ordinance to be written, the ordinance clearly says, if you transport waste from 5 homes or more, you're not allowed to use the transfer station. And I've heard complaints from and Dave's in the room, that there's too much traffic in the transfer station at this time. So if we made the 22 families on McMahon use our transfer station, we would have 22 additional vehicles in the transfer station if they could get their trash to the mainland. So once again, I'm concerned the way that we've written our ordinance, that we've prevented one person bringing trash to the transfer station, and we've increased traffic, which is, I think, contrary to what we want. It's certainly contrary to what Carla at DEP wanted. She said, minimize as many cars on the road as you can. And the next thing, and it ties into this, is we're talking about filing an incident report. Well, the first time that Chris comes in or his guys come into the transfer station, then the guys, if they're following this ordinance, would write a report and they would send it to the town office. Because it says right here, if you violate the principles of the ordinance, and this is in plain black and white, that we have to take action. And it clearly says, if I had the ordinance, it says, I'm paraphrasing, transporters are not allowed in the transfer station. And we've already established that Chris and whoever takes Molden is a
No,
transporter.
we have not. There is an exception.
By
There is,
definition, those are transporters.
no,
Brahma.
I'm sorry, but are you finished?
No. So
Well, how
once
much
again-
longer, Rich? Because I
Oh,
got the point already.
Pardon me, Brahma?
I think you heard me.
I didn't
Continue,
actually.
let's get this done.
So once again, we're writing an ordinance that is prohibiting two of our big users, and it's in black and white what we're prohibiting. And then we have an arbitrary rule that is saying that an attendant can think one of our other neighbors is violating this rule that's not written. He just feels it's being violated.
No.
There's nothing in here that says that we can't speed in the transfer station or you have to be a polite human being. But if someone swears at an attendant, we can say, well, you're denied access. That's also what happened in October. I'm not making this up. And what I'm trying to do is clearly write an ordinance that everyone in town can follow. I'm not against what these folks are saying. I don't want people from away bringing trash to Georgetown. I don't want to pay for it. But on the other side, our guys shouldn't be in a position to ignore a violation of an ordinance. Now I'm finished, Brahma.
First of all, I have to disagree with what you're saying about the definition. And if Dave is still there, I will defer to him to speak to this. There is an exception for an individual, a paid person from a given enterprise, such as either Island Association, bringing household trash from that association. No, per se, the Island Association does not generate trash, but the members of that association do, and they, as an association, hire a caretaker to bring it to the transfer station. That caretaker is, according to the definition in the ordinance, exempt as long as he does not make more than 3 trips a week in a single vehicle to deliver that trash. It is that exception that permits, in the eyes of the Solid Waste Committee, and they abstained from naming those specific entities only because it seemed that that would cause more problems, or could in the future, by appearing to give favoritism to those entities over some other entity that might meet the same set of criteria. But it is that criteria for an exemption that the select board believes, or not the select board, but the Solid Waste Committee believes continues to permit McMahon and Malden from having their paid person deliver trash in the name of the association, for all the members of it. It is not, therefore, an infraction of the ordinance. I think everyone understands that the DEP does not require use of this definition. It was convenient for the Solid Waste Committee to have an external independent definition so that they were not targeting it to a particular individual or entity in the town of Georgetown. For that reason, and because it did specifically, in our eyes, allow Malden and McMahon to become legal, which they are not under the current ordinance.
That's section
you know,
three,
so that's-
section 3C.
The way I see it, and the only, any person, municipal waste from 6 or more households is a solid waste transporter. Any commercial 4 or more trips, it's municipal waste is a solid waste transporter. So in that sense, that both falls under solid waste transporter,
Absolutely.
which would be eliminated by your thing.
They are commercial establishments transporting only their own municipal waste because they're allowed to transport their own municipal waste 3 trips or less per week, and they clear the bar. All right.
They don't.
They do, because it says if you're a commercial establishment transporting your own commercial solid waste 4 or more trips per week.
But
Right, they're not.
they don't create their own waste, Dave. They transport.
That's your
others' waste.
interpretation. Our interpretation is that those are commercial establishments.
There's 22 private homes.
There's Malden, Island Home. We're looking at Island Home as a commercial establishment. We're looking at Wood Bearing as a commercial establishment. We're looking at Malden, McMahon, Osprey Restaurant. If they want to bring their generated on their site product 3 times or less per week, it's allowed. That's in 3C. It's by definition in 3C, okay? You have to read and interpret 3C to see that 3C only excludes people that go 4 or more times per week. So I have spoken to at least one of the gentlemen that you're referring to, and he assures me that he only goes 1 time a week, and he's perfectly comfortable with that. So I think you're throwing smoke and trying to confuse this. We're trying to provide a service for the small businesses. We're trying to take care of all the complaints that we've gotten from the public about these. We're trying to help the small operators with 4 clients or 5 clients. We're trying to help the small businessmen, and you're saying now that we're trying to exclude them, and it's not true, okay? It's just not true.
So I guess my question on that whole definition, a person bringing waste from more than 6 households is a solid waste transporter. And or the guy bringing stuff 4 or more trips a week is a solid waste transporter.
Correct. That is correct.
Okay,
4 or more times
I
per
didn't
week.
read it. I was reading it differently.
Yeah, so if he brings it 3 times a week, he's not a solid
Yep,
waste.
I got you.
If the person handles 5 clients, he's not a solid waste transporter. Okay, he's in.
So
We're
it's
not gonna hassle.
As long
We
as
don't
they're
wanna
under,
hassle them.
as long as they're under 4 times a week, they're covered then.
That's exactly right. We do not want to hassle the small businesses. We do not want to hassle Malden, McMahon, and that's the best of our ability, what we put in this ordinance.
And this, Mike, and I'll bring this to Kristen, but since My point with this is neither McMahon nor Malden LLCs generate solid waste. They're bringing trash from private homes.
I guess that's a question for the attorney. That's
Very well.
I didn't, yep.
And I'm trying not to exclude people, and we only pay $1,200 a ton.
What's
We
that?
pay $1,200 a ton.
Oh, no, 130 a ton to Bath and 175, 200 something to get
What's
there.
bulky, or solid waste rather? Is it $200, $300 a ton?
130,
$130 a ton.
plus just, you know, plus transport.
So I wouldn't want to exclude any of our neighbors from using the transfer station. And that's my concern, is,
What do you think we're trying to exclude?
I don't know, but I know that there are some businessmen that are property managers that collect trash from all over the island, more than 5 homes.
Right?
Well,
Those are the people we're worried about.
Yeah, but Malden has 22 homes.
We're
And
not
you're
worried.
saying it's one. And
Yeah.
McMahon has 42 homes and you're saying
No, I'm
it's
not saying
one.
it's one, I'm saying it's a business.
There are businesses all over the island.
Send it to the lawyer.
There you go. I shall bring it.
I understand it.
Allison Freeman and Chris Martin both had their hands up. I don't know if it's, just wanted to flag.
I think Dave's explained it well enough. I'm now that I see that, I know what I'm looking for.
Are we ready to vote on my
Yeah, I think
motion?
so. Yeah, I'm ready to vote on it. Send it to,
All those in favor?
I'm in favor.
Thank you.
Those opposed?
And the reason I'm opposed is the wording on this ordinance is poorly written. And it is not in compliance with the DEP. And I want all of our ordinances to be as accurate as they can be, and this is not. So I am opposed.
Okay.
I'll send it to the,
2-1,
tomorrow.
2 council. And with that, want to make sure transacted all of the business before us minus public comment and adjournments. I turn this back over to you, John.
Is there any public comment? Allison? Oh, you're muted.
Nope, there we go. I just, as the person that wrote all of this, Bronwyn did a solid waste ordinance, new definitions. Bronwyn captured it beautifully. And I just want to say that the non-hazardous waste transporter license is much more nuanced, complex and nuanced than Rich presented. Yes, it involves conveyance, but it also involves other issues, which is where we get the 4 or fewer, 5 or more, and the business or municipality.
I invite
Regardless,
Carl to attend this.
if we do nothing with our ordinance, we will still want to report more accurately, as the DEP has requested on our reports each year. And they would like us to tell them the names and addresses of any haulers who are bringing trash from multiple households. And they also want to know how many households or users these haulers have. We, Georgetown, the transfer station, will not do anything in regards to enforcement of that. That is simply the DEP wants to know about those people in the event that those people should be included in the non-hazardous waste transporter license program. And Rich, if you ever want to talk to me about this, I would be happy to talk to you about it and explain more. Thank you.
Allison, I called the director of solid waste at DEP. I got it right from the horse's mouth, if you will. And she said
Okay.
she would sit in at a meeting if I can invite her to attend a select board meeting. And that's easy.
Okay,
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? I don't see any.
Chris Martin.
Oh, Chris, sorry, your hand's up. Chris, you're also muted. Chris Martin, are you there? I don't see any Chris Martin.
I'll ask to unmute and see if that helps.
There we go.
Okay,
I was struggling with my unmute there for a second. I would just like to, I spoke with Dave today. And I just wanted to add, based off that definition that Dave gave tonight, which was the same definition he gave to me. I as a representative from McMahon Island, Sheepscot Island Company, I'm okay with it. For some clarifying that kind of supports Dave's definition, Sheepscot Island Company does generate some solid waste as a company. I live out there in the summer as an employee. And also the vehicle that we're transporting, although it's my own personal vehicle, I'm being reimbursed by Sheepscot Island Company to use it. So from a standpoint, it's actually Sheepscot Island Company's vehicle, which would sort of even more play to the point of Sheepscot Island Company is bringing the trash as their own entity, and I'm not acting as a transporter for them. So I think from where I'm standing, I appreciate Rich making sure we're thorough on this because I don't want this to backfire on us, but based off the definition that Dave gave and Bronwyn gave, it fits us just fine. If that definition proves to be true.
okay, thank you. Anything else? I don't see any. Motion to adjourn?
Oops, I was muted. I move to adjourn.
Awesome, thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night, all.